I practiced in front of Kelsey last night, so if you don't like my delivery, you can ask her about it.
Well, did she give you a thumbs up?
After a while.
Well, it was all right, I'm sure.
Well, he didn't have to do what I suggested. It was just my opinion.
Well, it is good to give a lesson. It's been a while, and I'm always grateful for the opportunity just to give some words of encouragement to you guys. So thank you again for the opportunity. I decided just to give an encouraging lesson, and I'll start it off by asking a question. I forgot my visual aids this morning, but I had a picture of two birds, and I'd like to ask you if you would want to be one of these birds, which one would it be? First one was a bald eagle, and the second one I had a picture of a common turkey vulture. So, by raise of hands, who would want to be the bald eagle if they had to choose? And who would want to be the turkey vulture? Usually not so many for the second one there. But I'd like to talk about the turkey vulture. After what I've known, I wouldn't mind being one because of what they provide for us and how they were designed by God. So we'll first learn a little bit about the turkey vulture and how it compares to the eagle. Then we'll get into one of the Bible stories that I think correlates the same way, and we'll see what we can learn from that experience. When we compare eagles and vultures, there are some differences. Compared to the handsome eagle, the turkey vulture's physical features are considered ugly. Now you have to trust me because I didn't have a picture, but yeah, it's pretty ugly. The vulture enters the world ugly and becomes even more ugly as it grows up. A baby vulture is bald and gangly. Its beak looks like it's 3 times too big for its head, and its stubby legs look as if they're 3 sizes too small for its body. The wings of a young vulture grow to be 3 times as long as its body. Its length makes the body look even more out of proportion. By the time a vulture reaches adulthood, it has a big nose, large feet, short legs, oversized wings, and beady red eyes ringed with bright yellow circles. If that's not bad enough, the turkey vulture's head continues to change colors. It starts off a pink color about 1 year of age and gradually gets deeper red. The vulture sounds as bad as it looks. While other birds can make bright, cheerful noises, the turkey vulture is silent, with the exception of some hisses and grunts. You imagine the Lion King, they're flopping around. Or the Jungle Book, the cartoon, when they're all standing around and, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And they're just gangly. They're just hanging out. On the ground, the vulture is so awkward, it is barely able to put one foot in front of the other. Thus, if you ever see it, it just kind of hops around because it can't really walk. The second thing I like to compare with the powerful eagle, the vulture appears weak. They're easily intimidated and therefore the last ones to eat. They are easily driven off by other predators such as coyotes, wolves, or more aggressive birds such as eagles. Even female hummingbirds have been known to drive off a vulture when it gets too close to the nest. Unlike eagles and other birds of prey, vultures have such weak wings that they are unable to fly on overcast or rainy days. They must wait for the sun to produce thermals, which are rising columns of warm air, whereas eagles use thermals to soar. Turkey vultures rely upon thermals just to get off the ground. In fact, in many places, vultures are typically grounded until noon when the rising air currents can carry them along. Now, after listening to what I said, who would want to be a turkey vulture? None of those seem positive. But let's look at some positive things. Compared to other birds, a turkey vulture has a superior sense of smell. The vulture eats the foul-smelling food, which allows it to have the keenest, or in order to eat the foul-smelling food, it needs the keenest smell of any kind of bird. This ability to detect the faintest smell due to the fact that the vulture has a large olfactory system. Even high in the air, the vulture can detect the faintest odor of decaying carcass a mile or two away. This is an obvious benefit to the turkey vulture in carrying out the purpose for which God designed it. The vulture can fly higher than eagles can. While it is the master of awkwardness on the ground, it is a picture of grace in the air. Its broad wings, though weak, are able to take advantage of the lifting power of thermals so efficiently that it can fly for hours without a single wing beat. The thermals upon which the turkey vulture relies are actually able to lift it higher than the eagle can soar. Another thing about vultures is that they're more sanitary than eagles. How could it possibly be said that a vulture, which sticks its head into decaying carcasses and just nasty dead animals, roadkill, what have you, how can this animal be more clean than a bald eagle? Well, the answer can be found in the way that they cleanse themselves. After a turkey vulture is done eating its dreadful meal, it doesn't use water for bathing as other birds do. Instead, it uses the ultraviolet rays of the sun. UV rays are known to kill bacteria and are actually used in surgery to sterilize equipment. After a bath in the sun, any leftovers from the meal dry into brittle flakes, and these particles fall off easily as it flies along. Whatever does not fall off, it preens off one by one in its feathers through its beak. Now, I think the most important positive thing about a turkey vulture is this: it does more to protect humans than eagles. In spite of the turkey vulture's weakness, limitations, and repulsive outward appearance, God has probably used the turkey vulture to save more lives in human and beast than any other creature on the face of the earth. You see, without turkey vultures to clean up the remains of animals and other dead things, anthrax and other diseases would spread across the world at incredible rates. However, by taking into itself these violent, diseased organisms, the turkey vulture eliminates the possibility of it spreading. And although man has admired eagles for generations and even considering them to be gods, God designed the repulsive turkey vulture to do its most effective work by cleansing for the benefit of the very people that reject it. I think that's the most important lesson that we can learn from the turkey vulture. And believe me, they're repulsive, they're offensive. I even have a friend who said that he learned by firsthand experience that a vulture will actually throw up whatever it's eating for two reasons. For one, if it gets spooked by an animal, he'll throw up to kind of like offend the animal so that it'll kind of run away. And two, in order for the bird to fly away, it's so heavy after it eats, it's got to throw up just to fly off the ground. So that just tells you how ugly this animal is. But it's designed for a purpose. Just like all things in nature are designed for a purpose, the vulture is very useful. There's so many important lessons that can be learned from God's wisdom, which is expressed in the design of everything. In our Christian lives, we can learn so much from nature. God tells us to go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. Proverbs chapter 6. He also tells us, consider the work of his hands in the heaven, so we will not be prideful, in Psalms chapter 8. God can turn an ugly situation into a good one, can he? When I look for an example in the Bible of a bad situation gone good, I immediately think of the story of David and Goliath. David and Goliath, such an encouraging story of someone that had enough bravery and trust in God to carry them through a very ugly situation. I like to go through this story. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 17. You're welcome to follow along. And I'll paraphrase most of the story, and I'll read some of it. 1 Samuel chapter 17 is where we're reading. Let me set you up a picture of how ugly the situation was. First off, you have the Philistines. Philistines are just a thorn in Israel's side. They're battling at every corner. They're the enemy that are throughout the judges. And the Israelites are in a current battle with the Philistines. Philistines are on one hill, and the Israelites are on another hill. And in between them lies a valley. Now, strategically, if you're in the military, whoever attacks first has to go down the hill and come up the next one. This is a huge disadvantage for whoever attacks first because they're going to be going uphill, and whoever's on the higher hill has the advantage. So they're at a standoff. No one wants to attack first. They're both just waiting. The Philistines have an idea. They have this great, great warrior. They call him Goliath. This guy is a giant. He's over 9 feet tall. Some say about 9 feet, 9 inches. That is so tall. Kelsey and I were at a Ripley's, believe it or not, in Florida on our honeymoon. And there's this one guy, he was almost 9 feet. And his pants like came up to my neck. That's how tall someone like this is. He had a breastplate that weighed 125 pounds. 125 pounds just for his armor here. He had a javelin on his back, spear in his hand, and he had a person dedicated just to carry his shield that would go out in front of him. This guy is scary. From birth, he's been a warrior. He's done nothing but be a soldier. He comes out, and he says some ugly things to the Israelites. Let's see, another page. Verse 8, Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man. Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing this, the Philistine words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. So we have an ugly situation here. How can anybody in Saul's camp stand up to someone this big, someone this mighty? Sometimes through man's eyes, things look pretty bleak. In fact, Saul was probably the best man-to-man matchup that their camp might have seen. But there's a problem here. When we look through man's eyes, things seem a lot bigger than they are. But if we look through God's eyes, we get a better perspective of the situation. In fact, if you can imagine it like a bird flying above, when a bird looks down, things seem a lot smaller, don't they? If a bird sees a giant hill or a mountain, it might think it's a small molehill, right? If a bird sees a giant road or highway, it might look like a small stream or road. So, if we look through God's eyes on situations, things might seem a little less intimidating. But God doesn't always choose what we think is the best way. Human ways are not God's ways. Reading on through the story, here comes David. Jesse says, "Take this cheese to your brothers, find out how they're doing on the front lines, and come report back to me." So David goes, he checks it out, he runs to the front lines, and while he's there checking up on his brothers, that's the time in the morning when Goliath came out and said what he said. David is just awestruck of how nobody stepped up yet. And he's saying, how can we let this Philistine, this uncircumcised Philistine, threaten us like this? Somebody needs to do something. Verse 24 says, whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in fear. Have you ever been really, really scared? Have you ever been so scared enough to flee with great fear? You know, fear is a bad thing. Fear is a negative. It's not the worst thing ever, because some fear is a good thing. It's good to have. You say someone who has a fear of heights, they might be weary to climb a cliff or to climb a tree if they don't need to because they might fall. That could be a respectful fear for something like that. Or a fear of snakes because you don't know if they're poisonous or not. That's a respectful fear. A little bit is good. But when you're so scared that you're distracted from what needs to be done because of your fear, that's a bad thing. That's what we have to watch out for. And that's the kind of fear that struck all of Israel. Except for David. Except for David. David finds out that a reward will be given to whoever fights the Philistine and defeats him. So he decides to go to Saul, verse 32. David says to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against the Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it and struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord rescued me from the paw of the lion, and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Then Saul tries to dress David in his armor and gives him his sword and shield, and David just has trouble walking around in it. He says, "I can't wear these. I'm not used to them. Let me go in what I'm used to." He goes out, takes 5 stones, puts them in his shepherd's pouch, and goes out to battle. Here's the time everything's accumulating. This is the time the Philistines have been waiting for. 40 days they've been waiting for this moment. Israelites are scared to death. They're waiting for somebody to deliver them. Here comes David. He's ready. Here comes Goliath. He looks out and he sees what is a little bit more than a boy. The Bible calls David as a young man. He looks at him and says at David, he says, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals." Verse 44. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands. I will strike you down and cut your head off. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." Now, the Philistine moves closer to attack. David runs up fearlessly, grabs a stone, tosses it into the forehead of Goliath, and Goliath falls to the ground dead. David ran and stood over him, cut off the Philistine's head, and the Philistines, realizing what had happened, start to run. The Israelites gain their courage, run after them, and win this battle. Such a glorious, glorious win to this ugly, ugly situation. And it's because the Israelites let fear settle into the camp. God takes the bleak situation in all of our lives and proves that His mighty power and majesty are possible through an impossible outcome. Any other man of David's stature, one-on-one with Goliath, 10 out of 10 times he would lose if it wasn't for the power of God. Goliath was a giant with an attitude, right? As champion of the Philistines, he immobilized an entire army of Israelites by challenging one of them to duel with him. He made them forget that they had an absolute champion in the Lord their God. It took a bold shepherd boy named David to remind them that they were the army of the living God. Goliath was a problem to be faced on his terms, but not with his weapons. Goliath's strengths were so obvious, his size, his build, his armor, his arrogance, that others missed his vulnerability. Goliath had a glaring weakness that never occurred to him until David struck him in the head with a stone. When David was given Goliath's kind of weapons, David quickly concluded he couldn't even function, much less fight, with those tools. Goliath's strengths would have been David's handicaps. Armor-plated and heavy weapons were of little use to the shepherd boy. David went to the two weapons he knew he could rely on, his trust in God and his shepherd sling. When others looked at Goliath, they saw an opponent too powerful to defeat. When David looked at the Goliath, he saw a target too big to miss. David had armor to match Goliath's, but it was invisible. He was spiritually equipped, just like in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18, which describes in detail the Christian armor. The shield of faith, the sword of the Spirit, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of peace, the belt of truth. This is our armor that we can wear to defeat the spiritual battles that we fight every day. David had that armor on, and he wielded its weapons. God's weapons are not obvious, but they never fail us. How much of your spiritual armor are you wearing today? How much do we wear when we go out to fight for battle? Are we prepared like David was, or do we fear like the Israelites did? Who are the giants you are currently facing in your life? Are you struggling with something ugly that looks too big to conquer? You know, viewing impossible situations from God's eye, in His point of view, it helps us put our ugly situations in perspective. Once we clearly see from God's perspective, we can fight every battle more effectively, just like David did. And I guarantee you this, that through God's eyes, you'll find your problems and maybe the turkey vulture just don't seem as ugly as they did before. I hope this lesson has just been an encouragement to you, that no matter how big a giant may seem, through God's eyes, it doesn't seem very big at all. I hope you can take this lesson, and next time you see a turkey vulture, it might remind you that it was designed for a purpose, and it is a good thing that it does. If you have any prayer requests or anything that you would like to be made known to the congregation during this time, God is willing if you are willing to come to Him in the church. If you have anything, please come as we stand and sing.
Live for Jesus.